This is the special dinner you bragged about? My mother's voice sliced through the room like a serrated knife, loud enough for the neighbors to hear. My father let out a dry laugh, tapping his fork against the plate. Even a teenager could do better than this, Emily. Their words echoed no, vibrated inside my ribs. Nathan stiffened beside me. My kids stared at their plates, suddenly unsure if they were allowed to enjoy the food they'd been so excited to serve. The shame wasn't new. I'd grown up under their microscope, every choice, every attempt, every tiny effort judged, mocked, belittled. But tonight, something felt different. Something inside me stopped shrinking and started burning. I set my fork down slowly, deliberately. My voice came out quiet but steady. A warning before the storm. I didn't cook this tonight. And just like that, the table went silent. Because the truth waiting behind that sentence would tear apart everything my parents thought they knew. I grew up in a house where love had conditions, and I never seemed to meet them. My mother, Patricia Hale, had a smile she reserved for one person. My younger sister, Brittany. Perfect Brittany. Beautiful Brittany. Straight A Brittany. The daughter my parents liked to introduce to their friends. And then there was me. I wasn't rebellious. I wasn't troubled. I just wasn't enough. I learned that lesson early, like the day I was 9, standing in the kitchen with flour on my sleeves, excited to show my mom the very first batch of cookies I'd ever baked. She took one bite, grimaced, and said, "Sweetheart, you should really leave cooking to someone with actual talent." Matic, 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 Matic. Then she tossed the cookie into the trash as if it offended her. Brittany walked in 10 minutes later with a drawing, nothing special, nothing extraordinary. Just a kid's scribble of purple lines and lopsided stars. My dad lifted her up, kissed her cheek, and cooed. "Look at this, a real artist in the making." I remember standing there, hands still dusted with flour, feeling myself shrink, again. That shrinking would follow me for years. Whenever I tried something, anything, my parents found a way to twist it. "Emily, you're too sensitive. Emily, you're not trying hard enough. Emily, why can't you be more like your sister?" Eventually, I stopped trying to impress them, stopped showing them the things I created, stopped hoping they would be proud. But children don't outgrow wounds just because they age. They stretch with us. They settle under the skin and wait. And sometimes, they wait for a dinner table. By the time I left for college, I thought distance would fix things. It didn't. Every phone call was a performance review. Every holiday visit came with new criticisms about my clothes, my major, my future, my weight, my friends. When I married Nathan, they scrutinized him too. "He's polite," my dad said once, "but he doesn't seem ambitious." As if my husband were a resume, not a person. When Lily and Mason were born, my mother immediately forged her influence over them. "Oh, Lily's handwriting looks sloppy. Oh, Mason is a little too wild, don't you think? Are you sure you're doing this right, Emily?" I kept swallowing it. Year after year, visit after visit, cut after cut. Not because I was weak, but because I wanted my children to have grandparents. And because some part of me, some foolish, wounded, fragile part, still wanted their approval, still wanted to hear them say, "We're proud of you." But they never said it. Not when I built a loving home. Not when I balanced work and motherhood. Not when I survived postpartum depression. Not when I cooked countless meals, hosted birthdays, organized holidays, or showed up whenever they needed me. Silence. Judgment. Comparison. That was my inheritance. So when my parents sat at my table that night, criticizing the dinner before they even tasted it, they weren't just insulting a meal. They were dragging every wound from my childhood back into the room. And for the first time in my life, I felt something inside me stiffen instead of shatter. For the first time, I wasn't the little girl covered in flour, watching her mother throw away her cookies. For the first time, I was a woman, with a family to protect, a backbone that had finally learned to lock in place, and a truth that would hit them harder than any insult they'd ever thrown at me. They thought they could humiliate me again, but they had no idea who actually cooked the dinner they just mocked. If I'm being honest, I wanted that dinner to mean something, not to show off, not to impress anyone, just to finally have one peaceful evening where my parents looked at me not with disappointment, not with criticism but with something close to warmth. So I planned for a week straight. A full roast dinner, homemade sides, fresh bread, a dessert Lily begged to help with. I cleaned every corner of the house until my back ached. I triple-checked the recipe list. I even ironed the napkins, something I hadn't done since our wedding. Nathan noticed the tension in my shoulders while I lined up the silverware for the third time. He touched my arm gently. They're just your parents. You don't have to turn the house into a museum. I tried to smile. I know. I just want tonight to go well. He didn't argue. Nathan never argued unless he needed to. Instead, he kissed my forehead and said softly, "Whatever happens, I've got you." I didn't deserve him, but I thanked God I had him. As the afternoon stretched into evening, the house filled with the sounds I loved most. Lily humming while rolling dough, Mason mixing too enthusiastically and splattering the counter, Nathan laughing as he cleaned it all up. For a moment, just one, I felt like this dinner could actually heal something. Then my phone buzzed. "Mom, we're 5 minutes away. Please tell me your house doesn't smell like last time." "Mom, open windows if needed." I stared at the screen. Nathan looked over my shoulder and sighed. "Here we go. 5 minutes. 5 minutes until judgment walked through my front door. I checked my reflection in the hallway mirror. No flour on my clothes. Hair, neat. Smile. Present, but forced. Lily peeked around the corner, eyes hopeful. "Mommy, do you think Grandma will like the dessert?" I made the swirls extra pretty. My chest tightened. It wasn't fair that my kids felt this pressure too. I knelt down and smoothed her hair. "Sweetheart, Grandma doesn't have to like it. I already do, and I'm really proud of you." She beamed. It was the kind of expression a child should wear freely, not weighed down by the fear of not being enough. Then the doorbell rang. The sound sliced straight through the air. Nathan whispered, "Babe, breathe." I opened the door. Mom swept in first. Perfume thick and overwhelming. Her eyes scanning the house like she was inspecting a hotel she didn't plan to tip. Dad followed, hands in his pockets, already frowning at the rug. "You redecorated," he said, as if accusing me of something. Mom sniffed the air dramatically. "Smells, okay, nothing burned at least." Lily stepped forward, smiling brightly. "Hi, Grandma." Mom hugged her but loosely, distractedly, her eyes fixed on the dining table behind me. "You use those plates?" I suppose they'll do," Dad added. "What are we eating anyway?" Brittany sent us pictures of her dinner last night. Looked like something from a magazine. Nathan shot me a warning glance, "Don't react." I swallowed down the familiar sting and ushered them inside. As we all sat down at the table, Mom leaned forward, staring at the roast as if it had personally offended her. "Well," she said, tapping her manicured nails against the plate, "let's hope it tastes better than it looks." And just like that, the warm, fragile bubble I'd tried to build around my family began to crack. Mom didn't wait for anyone else to settle before reaching for the serving spoon. She prodded the roast like it might still be alive, then muttered under her breath, a little dry looking. Seizing of in the speed and suddet called any had process. In a dested, Dad leaned in. "Why is it that every meal Brittany sends us looks gourmet, but Emily's always look rushed?" Nathan's hand tightened around his fork. I brushed my foot against his under the table. "Not yet, please." I still had this tiny, desperate hope that maybe the food would win them over. Maybe they'd eat, relax, drop their walls for once. But I should have known better. Mom glanced at the mashed potatoes, then at me. "You didn't over-season these like last time, did you?" My blood pressure was terrible for days. "That's not," I began. "Oh, and the gravy," she cut in. "You didn't follow that Pinterest recipe again, right? It was lumpy." Lily looked back and forth between us, lower lip trembling. She'd helped stir the gravy. I squeezed her hand beneath the table. "It's perfect, sweetheart," I whispered. Dad sniffed loudly. "Let's just hope the meat isn't chewy. My jaw already hurts thinking about it." Nathan looked up sharply. "Robert, we haven't even taken a bite yet." Dad shrugged, wearing that familiar smirk. "We're just being honest." "Honest?" Nathan repeated. His voice was calm, but his eyes, the eyes only I could read, were dangerously close to snapping. Mom rolled her eyes. "Oh, please, Nathan. We're family. If we can't be honest with Emily, who can be?" I swallowed the lump in my throat. I wanted to disappear, to fade into the walls like old wallpaper. but I forced myself to keep my voice steady. "Let's just eat," I said quietly. "I'm sure it's fine." Mom scoffed. "Well, I wouldn't go that far." She took the first bite and made a face. A dramatic, theatrical, slow-motion grimace. "This is the special dinner you bragged about?" Her voice hit me like it always did, sharp, cutting, aimed straight for the softest part of me. Before I could react, Dad jabbed his fork into the roast, tasted it, and laughed under his breath. Even a teenager could do better. Mason looked horrified. "Grandpa, Mommy spent all day." Dad waved him off. "Oh, I'm sure she tried. She always tries. But cooking has never been her strength." Heat crawled up my neck. It was the same tone he'd used my whole childhood. Disappointed. Dismissive. Sure of his superiority. Nathan's chair scraped back an inch. "Emily worked hard on this," he said, voice low. "Maybe try appreciating that for once." Mom snorted. "We're allowed to have opinions." "No," Nathan said, leaning forward. "You're allowed to have decency. There's a difference." The room went stiff. The air, heavy. But Mom wasn't finished. She never was. She pushed her plate back and crossed her arms. "Well, I'm sorry, but someone needed to say it. If she's going to host dinners, she should learn to do it right. Presentation matters. Taste matters." Her eyes scanned the table like a judge in a cooking competition. "I mean, look at this. It's sloppy. The potatoes are uneven. The roast is overdone. Honestly, Emily," that was when something inside me cracked. Not shattered. Cracked open. A hot rising pulse of something fierce pushed against my ribs. My voice came out almost too quiet to hear. "Mom," I said. "Stop." She blinked, surprised that I'd interrupted her. I set down my fork slowly, deliberately, and for the first time all evening, I met her eyes without looking away. "I didn't cook this tonight." And just like that, every sound in the room fell off a cliff. For a heartbeat, no one moved. No one breathed. It was like my words detonated a silent bomb in the middle of the table. Mom's head tilted just slightly, the way she always did when preparing to swat away something she didn't like. "What do you mean?" she said slowly. "You didn't cook this?" Dad frowned. "If you didn't cook it, then who did?" Nathan set down his fork, eyes locked onto them, jaw tense. He already knew where this was going. He'd known long before I ever said the words. But this was the moment I had been both terrified of and desperate for. I folded my napkin and placed it neatly beside my plate. It wasn't burned. It wasn't underdone. Nothing went wrong. Their faces tightened at the indirect challenge. "I didn't cook tonight," I repeated. "So you weren't judging me. You were judging someone else's work entirely." Mom let out a humorless laugh. "Are you trying to blame Nathan because—" "No," I cut in. The room snapped into silence again. Lily and Mason watched me with wide, terrified eyes. Nathan reached under the table and squeezed my hand once steady, grounding. Dad leaned forward. "Emily, enough riddles. If you didn't cook it, who did?" I stared straight at him. "A professional chef." Mom blinked twice. What?" I took a breath. "Chef Marcus Reed. The same Marcus Reed whose restaurant you two drive an hour to eat at every other month? The one you call the best you've ever tasted." Dad's mouth fell open. Nathan looked away to hide a satisfied smirk. Mom shook her head, scoffing. "Emily, that's ridiculous. Marcus Reed cooks at events for celebrities. He doesn't—" "I hired him," I said, voice firm. "For today. For this dinner." Dad sputtered. "Are you telling us this entire meal, the roast, the potatoes, the gravy was cooked by a man with 2 Michelin stars?" "Yes." A moment passed. Then, Mom burst into laughter. Not amused laughter. The bitter, barking kind she used whenever reality didn't fit into the box she liked to keep taped shut. "Oh, Emily, please. Marcus Reed would never cook food this mediocre. You've been scammed." Dad nodded. "Definitely scammed. No real chef would produce something this bland." Nathan inhaled sharply. "Patricia, Robert, did you not hear yourselves? You insulted a world-class chef. You mocked food you didn't even try properly." Mom snapped. "Oh, calm down. If a real chef made this—" her fingers curled in air quotes. "Then maybe he's not as talented as the reviews say." My blood turned cold. Because this was exactly what they did. The rewriting. The bending of truth until it fit comfortably into their opinions. I pushed back my chair. "Fine," I said. You don't have to take my word for it. Nathan stood with me, pulling something from the counter, an envelope. He handed it to me, and I placed it in front of Mom. What's this? She demanded. The invoice, I said. Signed by Marcus Reed himself, along with the confirmation email, and the dietary adjustments he designed specifically after I told him Dad is cutting down on salt. Dad stiffened. Mom snatched the papers, eyes scanning the signature. Her face drained of color. It was real, all of it. Dad took the invoice from her trembling hands. What? Why would you hire him? Why not just cook it yourself? And there it was. The question. The real question. I felt something inside me finally, blessedly unlock. Because, I said quietly, I wanted one dinner where you couldn't criticize me. One meal where you wouldn't compare me to Brittany. One evening where we could sit as a family without someone taking a shot at me. Nathan's hand closed around my shoulder. Lily reached for my sleeve. Mason leaned into my side. I steadied myself. And even then, I whispered, even when the food was perfect, even when a Michelin star chef cooked it, you still found a way to tear it and me apart. Mom opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. No sound came out. Dad swallowed hard. The bravado was gone. The arrogance evaporated. I wasn't 9 years old anymore. I wasn't the girl staring at cookies in a trash can. I was a woman, a mother, a wife. And for the first time, I wasn't afraid of disappointing them, because they'd been disappointing me for decades. The room stayed frozen, the truth hanging heavy between us. Then Dad finally whispered, Emily, we didn't know. I met his eyes. That's the problem, I said. You never do. Dad's whisper hung in the air, fragile and shaking, as if the weight of what he'd said surprised even him. Emily, we didn't know. I didn't soften. Not this time. I held his gaze, steady and unblinking. You never try to know. Mom placed the invoice down like it was burning her fingers. That signature could be forged, she said suddenly, voice shrill. People fake celebrity names all the time. Nathan let out a sharp laugh, cold, disbelieving. Patricia, you criticized Marcus Reed, a man whose food you worship. You humiliated your daughter in front of your grandchildren over a meal you hadn't even tasted. Mom shot him a glare. Oh, don't you dare lecture me, Nathan. This is a family matter. No, he said firmly. This is a you matter. Because you've made Emily feel small her entire life and now you're doing it to our kids. Mom's expression hardened. Her chin lifted the way it did whenever she felt cornered. I didn't come here to be attacked. We simply said the dinner wasn't good enough? I cut in. It never is. Nothing I do ever is. Dad sighed loudly, rubbing his forehead. Emily, this is getting dramatic. We weren't attacking you, we were just giving honest feedback. You always overreact. There it was. The phrase he'd used on me since childhood. You always overreact. A silencer. A minimizer. A dismissal wrapped as concern. I felt my jaw clench. Dad, telling your daughter that a teenager could cook better than her is not feedback. It's cruelty. And you've done it my whole life. He dropped his gaze. He didn't deny it. That almost hurt more. Mom inhaled sharply. Well, maybe if you had a thicker skin. Why should I need one with my own parents? I demanded. She flinched. A real, visible flinch. I wasn't yelling. I wasn't crying. I wasn't falling apart. That unsettled her more than anything. Because for the first time, I was calm. Controlled. Certain. Lily's soft voice broke through the tension. Mommy, did Grandma really hurt your feelings? Mom looked horrified, as if the idea of a child witnessing her cruelty was somehow worse than the cruelty itself. Lily, Mom said tightly, adults just say things sometimes. It doesn't mean anything. But it does, Lily whispered. It made Mommy sad. The little crack in my mother's facade widened. Dad cleared his throat. Emily, maybe we've been too harsh sometimes, but you know how your mother gets. She just likes things done properly. I stared at him, and because I wasn't perfect, she decided I wasn't worthy. Mom stood abruptly. That is not true. Then prove it, I said quietly. Her eyes darted to the kids, then to Nathan, then to the uneaten food. For a moment I hoped she might apologize, but instead, she straightened her spine and said the most predictable, devastating words she could. You're being ridiculous. Your sister never takes things this personally. Ah, there it was. The comparison. The ghost of my childhood slamming back into the room. Nathan exhaled sharply. Brittany isn't here. And Emily isn't Brittany. Stop holding her to standards no one can meet. Mom's voice cracked. Well, maybe if she tried harder. I tried my whole life, I said. And you never saw it. Mom froze. Dad finally looked at me, really looked at me with something like regret flickering behind his eyes. Emily, we didn't realize it affected you this much. I let the silence stretch. It affected me enough, I said quietly, that when I planned this dinner, I genuinely believed the only way to get through it was to remove myself from every point you could attack. So I didn't cook, I didn't season, I didn't plate, I didn't touch a thing. Mom swallowed. And it still wasn't enough for you. Her lips trembled. Just barely. But enough for me to see at the beginning of a crack in the armor she'd worn my whole life. Dad placed a hand on her shoulder, maybe a gesture of comfort, maybe a plea for her to stop, but she didn't. Instead, she whispered, I didn't mean to hurt you. I nodded slowly. But you did. And the truth was finally on the table. Mom's whisper, I didn't mean to hurt you, hung in the air like a thin, trembling thread. For a split second, I almost reached for it, almost believed it, almost let myself fall into the old, familiar pattern of comforting her instead of myself. But then her expression shifted, a flicker of defensiveness, a tightening of her jaw, a flare of pride, and I knew the truth. She wasn't sorry for what she'd done. She was sorry she'd been caught. Dad stood behind her, looking torn, half wanting to defend her, half wanting to agree with me, and fully incapable of doing either. Nathan stepped closer to me, his voice low, grounding. You don't have to keep doing this. Not tonight. But I shook my head. No. I need them to hear this. Mom stiffened as if bracing for impact. Mom, I said, you didn't mean to hurt me. But you never cared if you did. That's the difference. Her lips parted. Emily. No. Let me finish. My heart was beating so loud I felt it in my fingertips. You say you didn't realize how your words affected me, but I did tell you. I told you every time I cried as a child over your comments. I told you when I moved out at 18. I told you when you mocked my major, when you mocked Nathan, when you mocked my parenting. Dad shifted uncomfortably. That wasn't mocking. Nathan, I said, turning to him. He didn't miss a beat. 19 times, he said coldly. Your father made 19 comments about me not being successful enough in the last 2 years. I counted. Dad's face drained of color. Mom sputtered. We were just trying to motivate. By humiliating us? Nathan snapped. The veneer cracked. Mom's voice rose sharp, defensive, trembling with outrage. We were doing our best. Parenting isn't perfect. And you, she jabbed a finger toward me. You've always been too sensitive, Emily. Ever since you were little, everything is always an attack to you. Something in me snapped. Because it was, I said, my voice shaking with an emotion that was no longer fear, but rage. Decades of it. Layered, compacted, waiting to explode. You told me I wasn't pretty enough, smart enough, talented enough. You mocked everything I cooked, everything I wore, everything I chose. You compared me to Brittany every single time you opened your mouth. You made me feel like a failure before I ever had a chance to succeed. Mom's breath hitched. Emily, stop. No, I cried. I'm done stopping. I've been stopping for 30 years. I'm done being small so you can feel big. I'm done letting you walk into my home and poison everything with your criticism. Dad stepped forward, palms raised. Emily, you're upsetting your mother. And she's been upsetting me my whole life, I said, voice icy. And I let her. Because I wanted a mother. Even a broken one. Mom's face crumpled. Anger, guilt, denial, shame, all fighting for control. You think I'm a bad mother? She whispered. I looked at her, really looked at her. No, I said quietly. I think you were a mother who only knew how to love one daughter. Silence cracked through the room like thunder. Lily suddenly burst into tears, throwing her arms around my waist. Mommy, I don't want them to make you sad anymore. Mason followed, pressing his face into my side. Grandma was mean. Mom looked gutted, absolutely gutted. Dad pinched the bridge of his nose. This is getting out of hand. We came here for dinner, not— This is dinner, Nathan said sharply. This is what dinner has always been with your family. Judgment, comparison, insults. Mom looked between the kids, their fear, their tears, and something shifted in her eyes. Maybe guilt. maybe the first crack of self-awareness, but then her pride, stubborn, unyielding, dragged her back. "This is exactly why Brittany doesn't have these issues with us," she snapped. "She doesn't turn every little thing into a catastrophe. She appreciates our honesty." I stared at her. "And that," I said softly, "is why she never told you the truth about the dinner." Mom froze. "What?" I took a slow breath. "Mom, you just mocked a meal cooked by a Michelin star chef. But you also mocked the dessert Lily helped bake. And you mocked the table setting Mason helped arrange. And you mocked my home, my husband, my parenting." I paused. "And the person who helped prepare most of the sides, including the vegetables you loved so much?" Mom blinked. "Yes?" It was Brittany. The room imploded. Mom's hand flew to her mouth. Dad's eyes widened in horror. Nathan exhaled, slow, satisfied. I didn't flinch. I didn't take it back. "I didn't tell you because I knew exactly what would happen," I said. "You don't see us. You see versions of us. Perfect Brittany, flawed Emily. Nothing I do will ever be good enough in your world." Mom shook her head violently. "No, no, that can't be. It is." And finally, after a lifetime of trying to earn their love, I realized I didn't need it. My kids clung to me. My husband stood behind me like an anchor. And for the first time, I chose us, not them. The silence that followed was heavy, so heavy it felt like the walls were holding their breath. My mother slowly sank back into her chair. Her eyes were shiny, unfocused, as if she were replaying every insult she'd ever thrown, and realizing they'd hit the wrong daughter all along. Dad finally broke the silence. "Emily, why didn't Brittany tell us she helped?" I let out a humorless laugh. "Because she knew you wouldn't believe her. You don't listen unless the truth flatters you." Mom winced. Not because she disagreed, but because she knew it was true. Nathan guided the kids to the living room so we could talk without them hearing more than they already had. They clung to me before they left, reluctant, confused, scared. It shattered me a little. When the three of us, me, Mom, Dad, were finally alone, Mom spoke first. Her voice was small, smaller than I'd ever heard. "Emily, are we really that terrible to you?" I swallowed hard. "Yes," I said softly. "You are. Even tonight, before you knew who cooked this meal, you chose to humiliate me. In front of my kids." Dad exhaled slowly, elbows on the table. "We thought we were keeping you grounded." "That wasn't grounding," I whispered. "That was grinding me down." Mom stared at her hands. "I didn't realize it hurt that much." "You didn't want to realize," I replied. She flinched again. The part of me that had chased her approval for decades, that part reached for her. But the part of me that finally valued myself, that part pulled me firmly back. "I spent years trying to earn something from you that I should have never needed to earn," I said. "I thought if I hosted enough dinners, worked hard enough, raised good kids, stayed polite, stayed quiet, eventually you'd love me the way you love Brittany." Mom's voice broke. "I love you. You love the version of me that doesn't exist," I said gently. Her eyes glossed over. Dad rubbed his temples. "You know your mother doesn't express emotions very well." I looked at him. "You both express them perfectly when it comes to Brittany." He froze. Mom let out a shaky breath. "You were always so independent. We thought you didn't need the same attention." I shook my head. "I needed parents, not critics." Those words hit them harder than the reveal about the chef. Mom wiped her eyes, quick and embarrassed. "Emily, what do you want from us?" I hesitated. For years the answer would have been love, or approval, or validation, but not anymore. "I want boundaries," I said. Dad frowned. "Boundaries? Yes. If you're going to be around me and my children, there are rules." Mom looked terrified, like she was about to be evicted from a life she had taken for granted. What rules?" she whispered. I held her gaze. "Rule 1. No more comparing me to Brittany, ever." Mom nodded slowly. Dad didn't argue. "Rule 2, I continued. You don't criticize my cooking, my home, my husband, or my kids. If something's not to your liking, keep it to yourselves. Or don't visit." Mom's lip quivered. "That feels harsh." "No," I said. "What you've done my whole life that was harsh." Dad swallowed hard. "And the third rule?" I took a breath. "Rule 3. You apologize. To me, to Nathan, and especially to Lily and Mason." Mom stiffened. Apologize. To the children? Yes. You hurt them today. You made them feel like their mother wasn't good enough. You made them scared. Her eyes filled with tears. I never wanted to hurt them. You didn't want to, I said. But you did. Silence stretched again. Then, a sound I had never heard in my entire life. My mother's voice, small and sincere. I'm sorry. The room shifted. Dad whispered, almost ashamed. I'm sorry too. For the first time ever, their apologies weren't wrapped in excuses, justifications, gaslighting, or deflection. Just two flawed people standing face to face with the damage they had created. And suddenly, the decades of weight pressing on my chest felt a little lighter. Not forgiven, not forgotten, but acknowledged. Mom reached for my hand but stopped halfway, unsure, tentative. Emily, can we fix this? She asked. I looked at her, really looked. The mother who'd hurt me, the mother who didn't know how to love me, the mother who maybe for the first time wanted to try. Finally I said, maybe. But it starts with honesty. Real honesty. Dad nodded. We want that too. I didn't fully believe them, not yet, but something inside me, the little girl covered in cookie flour, the young woman trying too hard, the mother determined to protect her children, finally exhaled. For the first time, I saw a possibility. Not certainty, not safety, but possibility. And sometimes, that's enough to take the next step. In the days that followed, the house felt strangely lighter, as if the walls themselves had released a breath they'd been holding for years. Nathan kept checking on me, brushing my hair back, kissing my forehead, asking, "You okay?" And every time, I answered honestly, "I think I'm getting there." Lily and Mason clung a little tighter than usual, sensing the shift without understanding the whole picture. Kids always know more than we think. 3 days after the dinner, my parents called. I almost didn't pick up, but I did. Dad's voice was softer than I had ever heard it. Emily, we want to try again. The right way this time. Mom cleared her throat. And we'd like to apologize properly. To you? To the kids? To Nathan? Her voice was uneven, uncertain, like someone learning a new language. The language of humility. So we invited them over. A smaller visit this time, a quieter one. I didn't cook. Nathan didn't cook. The kids didn't cook. We ordered pizza. When my parents arrived, Lily hesitated at the door, gripping my hand. I knelt down. It's okay, I whispered. You can listen to your feelings. If you want space, you tell Grandma and Grandpa. They'll respect that now. My mom's eyes softened with guilt as she overheard. Inside, we sat around the table. The same table that had held all that pain just nights earlier. But tonight, there were no comments about the food. No critiques about the plates. No comparisons. No tension. Just quiet. Then Mom inhaled deeply, clasping her hands in front of her. Lily, Mason, I owe you both an apology. The kids froze. She continued, voice trembling. What I said at dinner? It wasn't kind, and it wasn't fair. Your mom is wonderful, and she loves you so much. I'm sorry if I made you feel embarrassed or upset. My breath caught. Dad spoke next, looking directly at Nathan. And I owe you an apology too. I've made assumptions about you for years, and I was wrong. Nathan nodded slowly, not forgiving, but accepting. Then Dad turned to me. And you, Emily. We failed you. You deserved encouragement, not comparison. Love, not judgment. And we didn't give you that. My mother reached across the table, tentatively, carefully, like she was afraid she'd break me again with a single wrong move. I'm not good with words, she whispered. But I want to try, if you let me. For a moment, for the first time, I saw not the woman who criticized me, but the woman who didn't know how to love a child who wasn't like her. And maybe that was enough to step forward, just one step. I took her hand, not fully trusting, not fully healed, but willing. And she exhaled in relief. We didn't become a perfect family overnight. We didn't erase decades of hurt in a week. We didn't magically transform into a loving TV commercial family with matching sweaters and synchronized laughter. But we started something. Something real. Something earned. Something honest. Boundaries stayed. Respect stayed. Growth stayed. 2 weeks later, Mom brought over a store-bought pie. She walked in nervously. I didn't bake it, she said quickly, eyes wide. I thought I'd let the professionals handle it. Nathan burst out laughing. Even Dad cracked a smile. And for the first time in my entire life, I laughed too. Not out of politeness. Not out of pressure, but because the moment felt light, human, warm. That night, after everyone left, Lily curled beside me on the couch. Mommy? Yeah, sweetie. Grandma was nicer today. I ran my fingers through her hair. I think she's learning, I said softly. Are you still sad? I thought about it. About all the wounds, all the dinners, all the words that had stuck to my bones. A little, I said honestly. But mostly, I'm proud. Proud that we stood up for ourselves. Proud that we made room for something better. She smiled sleepily. I'm proud of you too. My heart squeezed. When the kids went to bed, Nathan wrapped his arms around me from behind. You did it, he whispered. You broke the cycle. Maybe I did. Maybe we all did just a little. I looked at the quiet, warm home around me. The same walls that had held hurt, now ready to hold healing. And for the first time, a new truth settled gently in my chest. I wasn't cooking for their love anymore. I was building a life where love was already here, and that, finally, was enough.